Hey friend, Chris here from WideLogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Today is an incredible day, and not only because there's a Logic Pro update, but there's in fact 2 updates for each version of the application. That is the 10.8 update of Logic Pro for Mac, as well as the absolute first update of Logic Pro for iPad, which is 1.1. I mean, this has never occurred before. Every update prior to this year has been for only one platform because there only existed Logic Pro for Mac. But with the release of Logic Pro for iPad this year, we today are experiencing 2 updates simultaneously. So obviously we've got a lot to cover in today's video. We're going to start out with the 1.1 update of Logic Pro for iPad, but don't worry, we're going to cover the Mac version as well, the 10.8 update. The first feature I want to show you is the brand new blockbuster Mastering Assistant effect plugin that can be loaded directly onto the stereo output of your projects. The Mastering Assistant effect plugin offers a quick and easy way for you to add that final polish to your project so it's ready for release. On screen, we obviously have the Take a Day Trip Manzana demo project that came with Logic Pro for iPad upon release earlier this year. And let's go right down to the effects buttons right here at the bottom and click. From here, we see all the different effect plugins for this particular track. But if we navigate to the Output tab right here and click, we have a brand new Mastering Assistant plugin that we can click on. And once we click on this button, Logic Pro will load the Mastering Assistant effect plugin and get right down to analyzing the audio of our entire project or just a section of the project. As you can see here, I have the cycle set for this one section. So we could choose either, hey, Mastering Assistant, I want you to analyze my entire project, or just this one section. Typically, if you select a section of your project, you would want to choose the busiest section, like a chorus. Of course, the project should be fully produced and mixed and prepared for the mastering step, as mastering should be saved as the last step of any production. All right, so I'm going to go to the mastering button and click on it to begin the analysis for the section of my project. So you can see Mastering Assistant has analyzed this section of the project, and now we see a preview of the tonal adjustments as well as any loudness adjustments. If we click on this button in the right-hand corner of the plugin view, we can expand the Mastering Assistant plugin to reveal, wow, quite a bit has gone on in the tonal balance department. We have a dynamic section and a stereo spread section. Now, the EQ adjustments definitely look a little crazy, but I'm going to demonstrate to you how not crazy they actually sound. Because Mastering Assistant is an automated process based on the actual workflow and boutique analog hardware devices that are used by professional mastering engineers. By using Mastering Assistant, you can ensure that your project will meet industry-specified loudness levels, as well as experience dynamic and tonal balancing and fine-tuning so your track is best prepared for the world at large. Cool, so on the left-hand side, we can see the tonal rebalancing that has occurred for this Manzana project. We also have various options to choose from in terms of the character of the mastering, starting with a clean character, which is an algorithm that offers a transparent yet punchy result, which is great for EDM, acoustic music, or anything that needs a clean yet punchy sound. After that, we have a valve character, an algorithm that simulates a processing chain which utilizes tubes to deliver a deep low end and refined high end, making it a great option for both acoustic music as well as hip hop. After that, we have Punch, an algorithm that embodies an aggressive sound with a subtle emphasis on the mid-range frequencies, which can be ideal for rock music. And then we have the Transparent algorithm, which is inspired by a modern and tight-sounding compressor, which is suitable for most genres of music. Underneath that, we can make adjustments to our auto EQ that has occurred thanks to Mastering Assistant, either by clicking on the slider and dragging it down to reduce these adjustments all the way down to 0. The middle section is 100% correction, but you can also further exaggerate these corrections by dragging the slider all the way to 200%. There's also the option for a custom EQ, which occurs as either a low shelf for boosting or cutting, a high shelf, as well as a mid-parametric band. And right at the bottom of the preview, we can see where the mid frequency is set. And we can make gain adjustments. So I'll just set it back to 0 and click done. And I'm going to make sure to set all these to 0 because I really want to be able to hear what Mastering Assistant is doing here. For the dynamic section, we don't see what's going on under the hood in terms of limiting and compression and anything else, but we do have a control for either increasing the loudness of our track or decreasing it. By default, Mastering Assistant sets the loudness for your project around -14 LUFS for an integrated value, as well as restricts the highest peak, the true peak, of your section or entire project to that of -1 dB full scale. There's also an Excite button that you can enable or disable, and this provides similar results to that of vintage transformer bass console designs of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Of course, we have a true peak meter, so you can see what's going on in terms of the peak values of your production, as well as loudness meters of momentary, short-term, and integrated values. We can also start an LU range analysis by clicking on the Start button. And at the bottom, there's a stereo spread control, which has been automatically set based on Mastering Assistant's analysis of this project. So in this case, Mastering Assistant has decided to increase the stereo width of this section. And of course, we have a correlation meter to the right, so we can see if our project is still remaining in phase with these stereo enhancements or is going out of phase. Cool, so let's hear the before and after results of Mastering Assistant for this project. Of course, we want to be sure that we're only hearing the results of Mastering Assistant in terms of tonal, dynamic, and stereo adjustments, and not just a boost in level. So we're going to enable the loudness compensation button right here. So when we bypass Mastering Assistant and reintroduce it, we're hearing only the effects of the plugin, nothing else. So let's check it out right now. I'll bypass Mastering Assistant, hit play, and then introduce it. All right, so obviously there's a bit of an enhancement there, but I don't think it's anything untoward the production. There's obviously an increase in the mid-range, a decrease in the low end, a little other extra action going on, but I'm kind of digging it. In the event that you're not digging it, let's try playing with some of the character controls here. Here we go. Cool, each one of these character options provides a different vibe for our production. We can see the true peak value is hitting no louder than -1 dB full scale, which is perfect. Our loudness is right around -14 LUFS, and the stereo spread is not going anywhere near out of phase. Let's try playing with the EQ controls. Or let's try increasing or decreasing the dynamic control. So as you can see, you can increase the level of your project to be much louder than -14 LUFS, but obviously we're starting to hit a point of diminishing returns because things are starting to distort in a way that's not musical. But thanks to the loudness compensation button, we're able to actually isolate and identify that we're crushing this mix a little too much. And of course, let's play with the stereo spread control. So we're effectively in mono right now. Let's increase the stereo width. full stereo spread. In this case, we're not going too far out of phase, but I'll set this right back to where we had it. And of course, if you see this EQ curve and you determine that, man, I really want to work on my mix a little bit more. I'm not keen on the fact that Logic has to reduce the low end this much, has to increase the mid-range this much. You can make your adjustments and then reanalyze this section. And boom, we have an updated mastering adjustment. Man, I gotta say, I'm so stoked about Mastering Assistant in Logic Pro. I mean, let's be real. Mastering was kind of the final missing piece from the application. And now the feature is fully automated to help you get your tracks ready for release that you can fine-tune and adjust as you see necessary to fit the vision of your projects. Next up, in the 1.1 update of Logic Pro for iPad, Quick Sampler finally has a recorder mode. It was kind of funny upon release that you weren't able to record directly in the Quick Sampler as you could on Logic Pro for Mac, especially given that the built-in microphones on the iPad are actually quite good. If we take a look at the 4 different tabs in the upper left-hand corner of Quick Sampler, of course we have Classic, One Shot, Slice, and all the way to the right, Recorder. All right, so I'm going to set the input for Quick Sampler to the input of my audio interface that's connected to my iPad. Obviously, we can see quite a bit of signals coming through from me speaking because the microphone is sitting right next to me. But I'm going to set the record start option here to either start immediately upon pressing the record button in Quick Sampler or wait for a signal to pass the threshold. The threshold is right here. To be safe, I'm going to leave it to start immediately, and I'll just press the record button when I'm ready to record. I have a lamp right next to me that when I tap my finger on it, it actually is quite a nice tone. So let's try recording that into Quick Sampler. All right, I recorded my sound. Let's expand the waveform view so we have a better view of what's going on. Let's adjust the boundary here to better match up with the signal here. We'll expand the view further. All right, let's set this to the transient. Drag this over. Perfect. So let's now play across the keys the sound that I recorded into Quick Sampler. And that's pretty sick, right? Additionally, you can finally use Logic Pro for iPad in split view as well as with Stage Manager. So if we click on the 3 dots at the top here, we can open up split view. And let's pop open my Files tab here. And I'm doing this on purpose because I want to show you that another update is that we can drag multiple audio files directly into Logic Pro. So I'll close the plugin view. Also close the play view. I'll select my first sample. Back it up here. I'll hold Shift on my keyboard, select all these samples, and then by clicking and holding, I can drag them all directly into Logic Pro. And when I let go, a brand new Drum Machine Designer kit is loaded. Look at that. So let's close split view. And from there, you can just keep going creating. We could play maybe some kick, tom, and everything else. But I've decided I want to replace a sample from this new kit that I created with a sample from Logic Pro's own library of samples. Well, let's open the library. And check it out. We could select samples. And another new feature of the 1.1 update is you no longer have to click on each play button to sample each patch, sample, and loop one at a time. Instead, you can click, hold, and drag across multiple samples to hear each of them in quick succession. Pretty awesome. So if I select a drum sample, and let's say maybe I want to bring in the cymbal. All right, I'm feeling that hi-hat too. I'm going to drag it right into this kit. But instead of dragging it into Drum Machine Designer, let's instead create a new pattern region, open the editor, and drag that hi-hat right onto a step sequencer lane. which also happens to be a new feature of the 1.1 update. 32-bit floating point recording is now supported in Logic Pro for iPad. If we go up to the settings in the upper right-hand corner, click on the recording tab. Under bit depth, we now have the option to choose either 16-bit, 24-bit, or 32-bit float. Of course, this requires that you own an audio interface that supports 32-bit floating point recording. If you do own such an interface, the benefit here is that you basically can never clip your audio recordings ever again, because if you do go over 0 dB, you can just reduce the gain of that audio back down to a healthy level below 0. Or if the audio recording is too quiet, you can increase the level without increasing the noise floor. For those using Apple Pencil with Logic Pro for iPad, there's now a new helpful feature where if you double tap on your Apple Pencil, you'll switch between the different functions quickly in the tracks area or other editors. Sweet, so I've switched to the velocity value view in the step sequencer. If I double tap again, I've switched back to just the plain on-off in the step sequencer. And of course, if we go to the tracks area or anywhere else, I'll double tap. All right, we switch to loop and back to trim. There are also new in-app lessons for Logic Pro for iPad, especially the Mastering Assistant lesson that will help you get up to speed with the Mastering Assistant Effect plugin, plus the new hybrid textures and Vox Melodics sound packs. All right, that covers the headline features of the 1.1 update of Logic Pro for iPad. So now it's time to dive into the 10.8 update of Logic Pro for Mac. Taking a look on screen, you might notice that the project in front of us is the Take a Day Trip Manzana project. And that's on purpose because the new demo project with the 10.8 update is exactly that, is the Take a Day Trip Manzana project from Logic Pro for iPad, now available full scale on Mac. You can find this project in the project chooser, and there's not just a stereo version, but in fact a spatial audio version. And I gotta say that I think the spatial audio version is fantastic and is a great example of how awesome spatial audio can be. Just be aware that you might want to copy and save the Lil Nas X project ahead of time, both the stereo and spatial audio versions, before you update to 10.8 in the App Store. Just like on Logic Pro for iPad, Logic Pro 10.8 for Mac also includes the brand new Mastering Assistant Effect plugin. And you can see that I've loaded it right directly onto the same section of this song. For the sake of brevity, I'm not going to explain all the controls again, but they are identical to the version in Logic Pro for iPad. And let's actually remove the mastering plugin, just so you can see that when not enabled, there's a button right here at the bottom of the stereo output to click to add Mastering Assistant. I've clicked it, so Logic has analyzed the section that I've set with a cycle. And if we open the effect plugin, boom, there it is. And if we go up to the mix menu at the top, there's also an option to open the Mastering Assistant plugin right from this menu. Cool, I think this is fantastic. This saves everybody a step in terms of the mastering process. Again, you want to first mix your project before opening the Mastering Assistant plugin, as mastering is typically the final step of a production. It's also worth pointing out that you cannot load the Mastering Assistant plugin onto anything other than the stereo output. All right, so that's a brand new plugin and automated feature that is introduced to both Logic Pro for iPad and Logic Pro for Mac. But if you're like me, when you saw the update of Logic Pro for iPad and you saw the brand new Beat Breaker effect plugin and the Sample Alchemy instrument plugin, you might have wondered, why do those plugins not come in the Mac version of Logic Pro? Well, that all changes now with 10.8. We can see that Beat Breaker is loaded on this Chill Vocal Sequences channel strip, and if you click on the plugin, you get the full version of Beat Breaker. Beat Breaker is a multi-effect plugin that allows you to radically reshape and reshuffle your audio in real time, allowing you to slice up your audio into beats, rearrange it, adjust the speed, repeats. It's amazing. So let's find that track right in the project and quickly see it in action. If we hear it without the effect, and with it again, I mean, that's pretty sick, and it's littered throughout the project. So we can see more instances of Beat Breaker on this analog lead. Let's hear that one, actually. Let's find that section. Now, Sample Alchemy was another plugin that was introduced to Logic Pro for iPad, but not for us Mac users. Again, in the 10.8 update, this all changes. So I've loaded the Canyon Chop lead here. Let's make sure that we have some audio to take a listen to. I'll cycle this section and check it out. I mean, this is sick. Sample Alchemy allows you to transform a single audio sample into a playable instrument using a variety of synthesis techniques. I see it as Alchemy's more approachable little brother. And just like with the other samplers, we can drag directly into Sample Alchemy. All right, so let's take a listen to that. I'm not going to dig super deep into Beatbreaker and Sample Alchemy in this video, but if you want a deeper view into each of these plugins, check out my Logic Pro for iPad video where I go into the weeds with each Beatbreaker and Sample Alchemy. Also new to the 10.8 update are the brand new Slip and Rotate mouse tools. Slip and Rotate have been with us in Logic Pro for a while now, but this is the first time that we have dedicated mouse tools for each editing feature. With the Slip and Rotate tools, you can edit the contents of your regions without having to dig into an editor or move the region manually. And this can be for audio regions, MIDI, pattern, and even drummer regions. So if I select the Slip tool as my Command-click tool, let's zoom in on a couple regions. And if I hold Command, I get the Slip tool. And if I click, hold, and drag to the left or to the right, I'm adjusting the timing of this MIDI performance, either by moving it to the left or to the right. And if I zoom in, the resolution of my Slip editing gets finer, which is pretty awesome. And again, this works for audio, as well as patterns. But with the Rotate tool, instead of moving the contents to the left or to the right, I can actually rotate what starts at the beginning or end. So check it out. If I move, in this case, I'm moving the contents to the left, and when it reaches the left region boundary, it recycles back to the right side. And of course, the same if we go in the opposite direction. So a really helpful feature for further editing any type of region. The new tracks dialog has been updated to something that I think makes a lot more sense for all the different track types and region types that we have available to us in Logic Pro. On the left-hand side, we have MIDI, and we can load either a software instrument or an external MIDI instrument. Following that, we can load a pattern region onto either, again, a software instrument or external MIDI. There's the drummer track type, and then an audio track type where you can load for either a microphone or line input, as well as an instrument input for guitar or bass. What's also cool is that multiple drummer performances can now live on the same track lane. So check it out. We've loaded Kyle and the pop rock drummer here with the SoCal kit. I'm going to go in the drummer editor and just keep the drum kit when we're changing drummers, just so the drum kit stays exactly the same. And for this first region that's selected, let's go to electronic and maybe load Leah. All right, so we can see that the editor and the presets have been updated. If I select the second drummer region, we can see, hey, this drummer editor has been updated to support Kyle's drumming type. And if I select the third region, go to percussion and select maybe Latin percussion, check it out, the editor has been updated once again. So if I select each region, we can see the editor update. And if we take a listen to each, which is incredible when you want different styles of performance throughout your project. Also, if we close the editor in the library, you can now load a drummer region right onto a software instrument track. So we've loaded this now onto the Steinway grand piano. I can guarantee it probably doesn't sound too good, but let's check it out. Incredible. But you may have also noticed there's a new option to populate with drummer regions. Booyah, an entire song right from the tracks area with drummer regions. Also, at long last, one of the old blue plugins in Logic Pro for Mac has finally been updated visually, and that's the pitch correction plugin. This mirrors the updated look of the pitch correction plugin in Logic Pro for iPad, which, by the way, with this updated look, we have a much clearer view of some of the new features that are included in the pitch correction plugin, such as the neural pitch detection algorithm, which is left on by default, and honestly is best left on, because the neural pitch detection will automatically detect the pitch range for your chosen track. In case you were wondering, yes, 32-bit floating point recording is also supported in Logic Pro for Mac. If you go to the top menu bar, go to Logic Pro, down to Settings, to Recording. Now have the option to choose a 32-bit floating point bit depth. But again, you're going to need an audio interface that supports 32-bit floating point recording. Still, awesome to have it included in both versions of Logic Pro. And of course, there's new sound packs, such as the Hybrid Texture sound pack. If we select, perhaps, the software instrument track, and go right down here, we have Hybrid Textures in the library, with a whole slew of new patches that includes sample Alchemy as the source instrument, as well as Hybrid Texture Apple Loops. But not only that, we also have the Vox Melodics sample pack, which includes over 475 lyrical phrases, hooks, layered harmonies, effects, and one-shots.
I've been looking for the right thing, so baby, tell me where you're hiding. I've been looking for the right thing, so baby, tell me where you're hiding.
I mean, that sounds pretty freaking awesome. Whew, that was a ton to cover in just one video. But there you have it, the 1.1 update on Logic Pro for iPad, as well as the 10.8 update of Logic Pro for Mac. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough, and I'll check you for more later here on Why Logic Pro Rules. Take care.